The first lighting man ever witnessed was of course the natural one, which is the sun, alongside lightning and perhaps aurora. Fire making is said to have begun around 1 million years ago by our ancestors, Homo erectus, meaning that the use and control of fire had existed even before modern humans, aka Homo sapiens. Early humans, just like other animals, obtained heat from a burnt forest or grassland, which had been lit by natural forces such as lightning, volcanoes, or extreme weather conditions. They likely visited burned landscapes right after a wildfire to forage for food and resources. They would have noticed the difference between food picked from a still hot area and one gotten from an already cooled spot in the land. The hot spot would have made the food softer and better for consumption. Seeing this, the early humans probably put their food on the hot spot just to make it warmer. Then gradually they would learn to take a piece of that hot matter, such as burned leaves and wood, home and work on it to make it burn more. Once they learned to ignite the fire themselves, they would have used it for various activities, including lighting to see at night and ward off animal intruders. Soon, as time went on, they would learn to harness sparks from two bashed-together hard objects to produce fire, alongside rubbing two stuffs together, such as two dry sticks or stones, to make fire by friction. Gradually, ideas began to pop up on how to make and utilize this form of energy more efficiently. Equipment such as the fire drill or bow drill, a device made of stick and bow that employs rotary motion to create fire by friction, were invented. This means of creating fire whenever we wanted gave humans a kind of new power and enabled us to occupy our first ever shelter, caves. The discovery of fire changed everything. Humans who would regularly just go to bed as soon as nightfall approaches would now continue their activities even deep into the night. To move around, they would make torches out of wood by simply lighting one end of a stick on fire and using it to see in the dark until it burns out. Though the light was dim, it was progress. Around 20,000 BC, oil-based torches were developed. This kind of torch used reeds soaked in animal fat to extend the burning time. Some were simply bones or sticks wrapped with rag at one of its end, which was then dipped into a flammable liquid, while others were lamps made from hollow rocks or shells with one end of a wick dipped into an oil such as olive oil, and the other end brought out freely or through a hole to the outside where it would be lit. The oil would rise through to the end of the wick outside where it will burn to give off light and heat. Ancient Egyptian lamps, aka Egyptian saucers, made use of linen wicks dipped in vegetable oil. Greek oil lamps, on the other hand, were molded with clay to be hollow in the center, where it would be filled with flammable substances. The most kinds of fuel used at the time for lighting were olive oil, beeswax, fish oil, sesame oil, nut oil, which were all liquids. Following the oil lamp was the candle, which was likely invented in 3500 BC. In the candle, solid wax was used instead of liquid oil, making it easier to handle. Although the candle was lighter, unlike the lamp, it couldn't be refilled, making it a one-time use stuff. Both the candle and the lamp were used together until the late 18th century, when gas lamps took over. The first description of a kerosene lamp was also made in 900 BC by a Persian scholar named Muhammad ibn Zakaria Razi, and the device itself was invented by Ignacy Lukasiewicz, a Polish pharmacist, in the 19th century. The Chinese made use of gas for lighting long before the Europeans. Around 500 BC, the ancient Chinese would move both brine and natural gas through bamboo pipelines to be combusted. Fast forward to 15th century Europe. In 1417, Sir Henry Barton, then Lord Mayor of London, ordered lit lanterns to be hanged outside by all citizens in the time period between Hallowtide and Candlemas. In the early 16th century, Paris inhabitants were instructed to keep lights burning in the windows of all houses that face streets, and that was the beginning of street lighting. In 1733, Sir James Lowther discovered the principle of gas lighting while experimenting with a gas sample he and his miners had found while digging a pit. By the late 18th century, William Murdoch, a Scottish chemist, proposed the use of gas in place of oil in lamps. He would create a lamp filled with gas that burns as soon as it escapes through a nozzle to the outside. He used this device to work around at night, and when he saw good his construction was, he would perform more experiments and find coal gas to be the most effective gas to use. In 1797, he would install gas lights in his home and workplace, a company known as Soho Foundry Steam Engine. He would fix the light on the outside for the public to see. They were astonished. One of his colleagues, Samuel Clegg, upon seeing this, quit his job and went on to start his own gas lighting business known as the Gaslight and Coke Company. Soon enough, several inventors and businessmen began to jump on the trend. By 1816, some cities in England had adopted gas lighting, and Paris followed so in 1820. Now, these gas lights were cheaper than oil lamps and candles, costing up to 75% less. The gas lights were about 3 times brighter than oil lamps and required just a simple twist switch to be controlled. Adding to all these, the gas traveled in underground pipes, making it safer and easier to maintain. The use of gas lights enabled factory workers to work for longer hours, thereby increasing productivity. Gradually, other countries such as America and Russia began to make use of gas lights. With these brighter lights, people could now read clearly at night and for longer time, thereby increasing literacy in the society, which helped accelerate the Second Industrial Revolution. Gas lighting really changed the world in a way. Though gas lighting was great and amazing, it was not perfect. Many buildings were burnt down due to gas accidents. The gas lamp, upon producing bright lights, also gave off huge amounts of heat. The natural gas or methane being burnt in gas lamps often produced carbon monoxide, a colorless and odorless gas that tends to be very dangerous to the body, amongst other problems. In 1761, an English scientist by the name Ebenezer Kinnersley demonstrated the production of light from a heated wire. The wires ended up melting or reacting quickly with the surrounding air. In 1802, using an immensely big battery consisting of 2,000 cells situated in the basement of the Royal Institution of Great Britain, Humphrey Davy produced an incandescent light, which is light emitted from a heated object by passing current through a piece of carbon, during which the carbon glowed. Though the light wasn't bright enough considering the size of battery used and didn't last long enough, these demonstrations led to numerous inventors experimenting with different materials, trying to find the perfect and most efficient way to produce electric light. After numerous demonstrations and patents by various inventors, Joseph Swan in 1850 produced a light bulb by enclosing carbonized paper filaments in a vacuum glass bulb. However, the vacuum was not good enough. The bulb didn't last long and therefore was of no use commercially. In the 1870s, better pumps were developed and Swan returned to his experiment. Using a treated cotton thread, Swan was able to produce an electric bulb that lasted longer and also solved the issue of bulb blackening. He then obtained a British patent on November of 1880, and his house in Gateshead was the first home in the world to have working light bulbs installed before he began fixing the bulbs in other homes and landmarks in England. Fame started to come. In 1881, he started a company, the Swan Electric Light Company, and began selling his bulbs. In July of 1874, a Toronto medical electrician by the name Henry Woodward and his colleague Matthew Evans got a Canadian patent of their own light bulb invention, which involved a carbon rod held between electrodes in glass cylinders filled with nitrogen. After they tried to commercialize their invention but failed, they sold their patent to Thomas Edison, an American inventor and businessman, in 1879. While Swan was busy developing his light bulb in the UK, Thomas Edison was in US working on his. Edison took the work seriously in 1878, and in October of that same year he filed his first patent, Application for Improvement in Electric Lights. After several more experiments with metal filaments, the next year in November 1879, Edison would file another US patent for an electric lamp using a carbon filament or strip coiled and connected to platina contact wires. Soon enough, he and his team found that a carbonized bamboo filament could last more than 1,200 hours, the longest-lasting incandescent bulb to date. And in 1880, he began distributing his new product. Not happy about his rival in the UK, Edison would sue Swan in the US for infringement of Edison's US patent of 1879. However, after Swan presented evidence of prior experiments and research of his, Edison was found guilty instead, and Swan was set free. Swan, not ready to let this slide, went back to England and sued Edison for infringement. Swan won the case and Edison lost again. The court made Edison enter into partnership with Swan, and in 1883, the Edison and Swan Electric Light Company was established as a collaboration between Swan and Edison. Edison would later buy out Swan's share though, and improve on the light bulb. So in summary, Humphrey Davy began, Joseph Swan developed successfully, and Thomas Edison perfected the light bulb. Although the new style of lighting, the incandescent bulb was incredible and much better than the previously used gas lamps, in that it produced less heat, no more carbon monoxide, and lower fire outbreak rate. The incandescent bulb used only 20% of its power to produce light, while the rest was just heat. Scientists and inventors soon began looking for a way to improve lighting again. Not long after developing the incandescent bulb, Thomas Edison, along with Nikola Tesla, in the 1890s began working on a new kind of bulb called the fluorescent lamp. Though the kind produced then were not efficient, it laid the groundwork for other inventors to follow. Soon enough, in the early 1900s, Peter Cooper Hewitt, an American inventor, produced a blue-green fluorescent light that was more efficient than the incandescent bulb, but wasn't of much use due to its color. In 1973, due to power shortage, a set of engineers were forced to create a stable, usable fluorescent bulb that utilized lesser power but produced bright enough light. Later, a man by the name Edward Hammer was inspired to bend the tube of a fluorescent light to produce the first compact fluorescent light. How fluorescent light work is that electric current would be discharged or passed through a gas in a tube. When this happens, the gas, such as mercury vapor, gets excited, which produces short-wave ultraviolet light that then causes a phosphor coating on the inside of the lamp to start glowing. Compact fluorescent light, or CFL, lasts about 10 times longer than the incandescent bulb and is 50 to 75% more efficient. In 1961, two scientists, Robert Bayard and Gary Pittman, invented the infrared light-emitting diode at Texas Instrument, an American semiconductor company, using gallium arsenide. However, the LED, being very small and on top of that infrared, was of no much use. The following year, on October of 1962, adding phosphide to the gallium arsenide, a 33-year-old General Electric scientist, Dr. Nick Holonyak Jr., was able to produce and demonstrate the first practical visible spectrum light-emitting diode. It was red, and his colleagues, amazed at the little light, called it the magic one. For this, Holonyak was called the father of LED. After this, various scientists and engineers began serious work on this new type of light, and soon the orange and green LEDs were made. In 1972, M. George Crayford, an American electrical engineer working in Monsanto at the time, managed to mix one green and one red diode to create a pale yellow LED. He also made an LED that is about 10 times as bright as Holonyak's. From there, Monsanto became the first company to produce LED lights in large quantity. By now, red, orange, green and yellow diodes had already been invented, but not the blue one. Blue diodes were so challenging for scientists because blue light is of high energy compared to other colors of diodes already made and requires specific semiconductors that can produce very narrow wavelength of light. Finally, in 1994, using the difficult-to-handle semiconductor, gallium nitride, Shuji Nakamura successfully created an ultra-bright blue LED. Then 2 years later, scientists coated the blue LEDs with fluorescent phosphors to produce white LED light. LED lighting was now complete and set to take over the world. At first, LEDs were used mostly as light indicators in circuit boards and small electrical equipment, but as it developed and got brighter, it began to serve numerous purposes. A number of small LEDs can be stringed together and made to shine as one in a bigger bulb. Nowadays, LEDs are used everywhere, from homes to commercial centers, traffic lights and more, and is gradually replacing the incandescent and fluorescent light bulbs. As well as lasting 20 to 25 times longer than the normal incandescent bulbs, LEDs are also very efficient, producing light up to 90% more efficiently than incandescent bulbs. At the early stages of LEDs, just like some other lighting methods before it, light-emitting diodes were expensive, but as technology advanced they became more and more affordable, and today is used by many all over the world.